Swell, without me giving up too much, it's very difficult place to surf. And then the wave itself on the proper day is beyond nuts. Like there's not many people that can even surf it because it's so heavy. The day we got there, the swell was way too big in the wrong direction. So it was doing these like wicked backwash, like literally talking 10-foot swells coming into like, 15-foot face, like refractions and like just slamming against each other, going like 40, 50 feet in the air. Balaram being the kid that he is, he sees it. He's like, oh, I'm going to go try to like, paddle into like the part that's coming back into the main wave. And almost do like transition onto a wave is what he was trying to do. And he just got like tossed. So I had like, the funny thing about that photo is I just took it like he was just messing around and I'm like, I just shot it. And I was like scrolling through the photos after and, didn't think anything of it. I literally thought it was like full on B-roll and probably never even would have put it out there. And then I showed it to another photographer that was on the trip, Brian Evans. And he's like, oh, that's pretty good. That's pretty solid. And then I utmost respect for him too. He is, one of my favorite photographers out there. So basically he kind of like jazzed me up about it a little bit. So then I sent it out and I sent it to Surfer, Surfing, and Surfer's Journal and ended up getting a bidding war on the photo.
I know.
All three of them wanted it for covers and then, and whatever. And that was the same time I think surfing was going out of business. So it got weird and held up for a little while, but I couldn't believe I thought it was a junk photo and it ended up being like, I could have got like, 3 covers if you could do that. But, so ended up being a Surfer Mag cover. So it was pretty neat.
So can you tell us, I mean, like we're talking a lot about like Northeast or, like maybe even like Long Island centric, surf photography and the kind of culture of those places. But you've traveled a lot too. I mean, like outside the country, you've traveled on other projects for companies. And can you elaborate on that?
Yeah. So basically, after I kind of got my feet wet and then started, moving into, contributing to Surfer and Eastern Surf and this and that, kind of built up a little bit, I guess, reputation for myself as a guy in the Northeast. And then just loved, obviously, like all of us would love to travel. So definitely would travel whenever I could. And I would always bring in my camera, fast forward a little bit, just through the store and through other things in my life, able to build relationships with certain people and companies and surfers. So that actually gave me connections to get on some of these trips and ended up working for Red Bull on some stuff, did like a lot of that Red Bull ice breaks, did some stuff for Hurley, did some stuff for Quicksilver, all sorts of things. But lucky, knock on wood, super lucky. My wife is awesome. Even when I had 2 little kids, I was pretty much allowed to travel at any time, telling her that I'm making money when I really wasn't. And, maybe make a few bucks here and there, but was able to surf pretty much everywhere that the surfer would have on, a absolute must do hit list. I've been there, South Africa, Indonesia, Tahiti, Fiji, all up and down the East Coast, obviously, Caribbean, Ireland, all over Europe. So pretty much, quite a few places and a lot of places I probably never even would have thought about going that I was lucky to go to.
What would be your favorite? Give us a memory of one of your most epic trips.
Probably the best trip. I don't want to say the best trip, but the overall best day I've ever seen surfing was probably Fiji. So the Fiji trip itself was something nuts. So it was an Oakley trip, and they got a sailboat, 110-foot sailboat, and we flew into Fiji and then drove around the island to the capital, Suva, or I think it is, and then took a boat 10 hours south to a chain of islands called like the Lau Group. And there's these 3 islands, and basically the trip was like 10 days long. So you stop at like these atolls in the middle of nowhere. There was no land. It's just a reef and perfect waves rolling around it. You're the only people around. There's like 10 guys on the boat, 12 total, 10 surfers and then me and a couple other guys. So we'd hit that and then go to a couple islands. Fast forward, get some great waves along the way. Fast forward to the last day. The whole time I'm shooting, taking pictures, this and that. Get to the last day, and to preface it, the whole trip, you know, most of it's lefts. In, you know, that whole South Pacific is a lot of like lefts, like chokes and this and that. So, and that's kind of the same with Fiji. You know, Tabaroo, everything's like left. So I'm asking our guide the whole time. I'm like, hey, are there any rights? Any rights? And he's like, yeah. He's like, the last island we're going to go to, there's a really good right. It's like one of the best rights in all of Fiji. He's like, but the wind is always wrong for it and everything. Long story short, we get to the last place and we go on. We have to like ask permission for the chief. So we go in, we meet with the chief. We give him some fish. He gives us permission to surf the reefs. So we're surfing these couple little waves, really heavy, sketchy, and a couple guys get beat up, like hit the reef, and just like everyone's just beat up from surfing for 10 days or 9 days, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then it's like the last day. It's late morning, and the wind flips, and it's onshore on the island side that we're on, which is always offshore. It's like trade winds. So I go to the guy. I'm like, hey, where's that wave? Is it, like, what's going on? He's like, yo, it's probably really good right now. So I go around the whole boat trying to get everybody to go. Nobody wants to go. Finally, kind of convinced 2 other guys to go. I grab my board, my camera. A couple other guys grab their boards. We take this little dinghy around the island. Rain, wind, it's like the weather's nasty, but we get to this little reef pass, tiny reef pass. I kid you not, it was like 6 to 10 foot faces, this right that was like it was literally like a video game. Like you easy takeoff into, like, you do a bottom turn, and it was like probably like a 30-yard tube, absolute perfection, not a drop of water. Literally, we drop in, get to come out, and you would be high-fiving the guy on the shoulder. And it was just, I didn't take one picture.
No.
I just surfed. I didn't take one picture. Went back to the boat. Nobody believed us. It was literally the best waves I've ever seen on any trip in my entire life. And, just had it was me and 3 other guys. No pictures.
That's awesome.
That's amazing.
That's great. That's
had
great.
to do it. So that's definitely my most vivid memory as far as, a surf trip and a photo surf trip where I didn't take any photos of the best waves.
Yeah. Well, so I'm kind of interested in what Lido was like a decade before I kind of started hanging out there. If you guys want to elaborate on that a little bit. I was like mid-90s, and it was pretty empty, I think, out where I was, because I was lucky to be surfing Fire Island for the most part.
It was empty.
It was.
It was empty. It was, I can say that, I mean, there's still, you talk about like the personalities that would like float around in the water or on the boardwalk. And, I know Mike and I talked about how like the Lido Surf Shop was kind of like ground zero for cultivating this fabric of personality and community, really. And if there was a big swell, I don't know how many people you think would be out at Lido West, Mike. Maybe
not a lot, maybe 15, 20.
15.
I remember that.
Yeah, 15 guys.
Like surfing Azores with 10 guys and it's pumping, and you're like, okay.
I have some video.
It's like, yeah.
I have some video of a day I'll never forget. It was I couldn't even tell the exact year. I would have to pull it up. It's like on tapes, but I think it was actually in one of like the Lost Across America movie. Just a couple lineup shots, but it was probably the best Lido I don't want to say I've ever seen, because I've seen a lot of good Lido, but it's up there. Maybe top 5 or so. Probably 15, maybe even bigger than that. Foot faces, absolutely perfect tubing A-frames left and right. I was like, I go down there, I check it, because I was like, for me personally, I was like very religious about checking it, just because like now we see everybody shoots photos there and everything, but it's those A-frames, it's like the most picturesque things ever. So I was just constantly, even back in the day, I was trying to get the perfect A-frame whatever photo. So anyway, I have video of this day, and then I remember everybody surfing down west in Long Beach, and back then it was kind of hard to get people to go down to Lido, especially when it gets bigger.
Right.
People didn't want to deal with the paddle out and this and that because it's a little bit harder. So everybody would surf in town. And, I couldn't get anybody to go back. Finally got, my good friend, Sean Killarney, who was like 15 at the time. He's always been a little bit of a charger. So got him, convinced him to come back down there and, and went out. But I remember days like that where there's like, there was nobody. Like you get big and really good on a day like today, like, these big swells, there'll be, probably 100 guys out. Back then it was sometimes nobody. And not too long ago. It's really been a kind of recent phenomenon, believe it or not.
Yeah, I think technology has a lot to do with that. I remember there was a tree in my backyard, and I would the weather patterns, I would have to look at them in the newspaper and try to forecast the high and low pressure systems. And then you're like, ooh, it's going to rain today. It's a low pressure system because I saw it in the newspaper. And then there was this giant tree in my backyard. And if it pointed in the right direction, I was like, I bet you it's
That's
good.
Probably it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But now everyone looks at that, magic seaweed and everyone,
God, I can check 5 beaches from my house, in 10 seconds. Look at the cam. So,
well,
definitely different.
Something I really want to kind of zero in on, and I think maybe it's nostalgic for me, but it's just kind of how I perceive you, outside of being, the photographer and being the surfer, and now you can say you're one of the old guys in town, but yeah, I mean, unfortunately we are, but I kind of see you as a staple, as one of those personalities that defines a place. And I think that's important creatively. I think it's important for the community. I think it's important for the industry, with you and your shop. And I kind of wanted, for our listeners, I want you to kind of talk a little bit about how, those early Lido days led to your development as a surfer, as a photographer, and now as a business owner. I mean, we've talked about this in the past, and there really is a trajectory of your growth. And I think that's, worthy of talking about.
Yeah. Well, that whole Lido, Lido surf and sport era was definitely a big influence, I believe, on a lot of people as far as, so people look at it now and it's, there's a scene, I guess you would say, in New York, different scenes, I guess, you have this whole city thing going on now, or for the past many years. And even in Long Beach, there's a lot of things to do now. They have student surf, and just, there's a lot of, if you are a surfer, there's a lot of ways to stay active in the community these days. Back when we were younger, there was nothing. Pre-Lido surf shop, there was literally nothing. There was, you always heard stories of the 60s and 70s when Gilgo was, the big thing. And, but then
whole family out there. Yeah.
Yeah.
That lasted for a very long time. I think there is still a bit of that with the Fowles hanging out there, and there's, there's still things going on there.
Yeah. That was a huge scene. And a lot of the older guys that I talked to always said that was it was literally, New York was ground central for East Coast surfing for a very long period of time in the 60s and 70s. Some of the first surfboards were shaped. Those guys are kingpins. Some of the, I was reading up on it a little bit, and they're literally one of the first guys ever to shape boards on the East Coast. Is from that whole Lindenhurst, Gilgo area. I don't know if it was Tommy, I think it was someone, or Charlie, someone before Charlie, but soon after, and then, whatever. So anyway, there was that scene, and then going forward into my generation, it was there was really no scene. And then Lido came online, and they tried to actually make a scene. So they had a little pro contest, the Beast to the East, and then just were encouraging kids to hang out at the store. They had a skate ramp in the back. So then it was just everyone, me and Brian Walsh, and I could go on and on with the names, my partner Dave, Al Prisco, so on, Larry Herrick, there's so on and so on. There's so many different guys. Right. And just hang out there all day long, just be full on shop rats. And then literally we wait for waves and then go surf right out back. And that kind of like, I think it galvanized with a lot of us, because a lot of people kind of just